Welcome to today's deep dive. Today we are exploring the fascinating and honestly often really hidden psychology behind our daily habits, and specifically the incredible lengths we go to just to conceal them.
Right, the stuff we don't want anyone else to see.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, our core source material is this deeply personal, incredibly insightful article by Susan Gast. She's the founder of Live Better Sober.
Which is a fantastic resource, by the way.
It really is. You can find her work and all her resources over at livebettersober.com. And our mission today is to explore Susan's specific guidance and her reflections on this concept of hiding alcohol from family.
Yeah.
But, more importantly, we're going to use her story to uncover a really surprising psychological truth about who we are actually hiding our bad habits from.
Because it's a remarkable piece of writing. I mean, it completely transcends the specific topic of alcohol.
Cool.
What Susan has provided us with here is essentially a masterclass in how the human brain normalizes gradual changes and how we can just, construct this entire architecture of secrecy without ever consciously admitting to ourselves that something is wrong.
I love that phrase, architecture of secrecy, to kind of get us into that mindset. I want you to picture something. When someone is getting ready to sell their house, right? And they do that intense, almost obsessive staging.
Oh, yeah, the deep clean.
Right. They hide all the family photos. They clear every single appliance off the kitchen counters. They put a bowl of perfect fake lemons on the kitchen island.
Just zero signs of actual human life.
Exactly. They want the house to look like nobody actually lives there, which makes total sense when you're, expecting a buyer to walk through the front door in 10 minutes.
Because they're creating a perfectly curated illusion for an audience.
Right. But imagine doing all of that, like wiping down the counters, hiding your personal items, setting out those fake lemons every single day when absolutely no one is coming over.
Oh, wow.
You are just doing it for an empty room.
I mean, it sounds exhausting, frankly. And it really points to a profound level of internal isolation.
It does. But Susan's writing suggests that a lot of us do a version of this every single day.
Yeah.
We build these incredibly elaborate routines to hide our messy realities.
They do.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Because to understand why someone feels this, like compelling need to hide a habit, we first have to look at how that habit grows to a size that requires hiding in the first place.
Right. It doesn't just happen overnight.
No, not at all. According to the timeline in Susan's story, this is a very slow burn.
Very slow. And that velocity is actually the most important factor here.
Really? How so?
Well, when we look at behavioral psychology, sudden drastic changes in our behavior usually trigger massive internal alarms. Like if you typically drink 1 cup of coffee a day and suddenly, you drink 12.
Well, your heart would explode.
Exactly. Your body and your brain will panic. The alarms go off. But gradual changes, they bypass our internal security systems entirely.
That makes a lot of sense. Because Susan reflects on her early drinking days, back in her 20s, and she explicitly notes that there was nothing to hide back then.
It felt totally normal.
Yeah, 2 or 3 drinks, maybe a couple of times a week. It felt completely standard because the people around her were doing the exact same thing.
And that is what psychologists call social mirroring. It is an incredibly powerful normalizer.
Social mirroring.
Yeah, if everyone in your immediate circle is engaging in a specific behavior, your brain just categorizes that behavior as safe. It becomes standard and essentially invisible.
Right. But the timeline she outlines spans a 20-year drinking habit. So over those 2 decades, those 2 or 3 drinks quietly became 4, and then 5.
Creeping up.
Just creeping up.
Yeah.
Eventually, a typical night for her settled at 6 drinks.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that on rare occasions, like the night before a day off, it would easily be 7 or 8.
Yeah.
So I got to ask, how does the brain not sound the alarm when the volume literally triples?
What's fascinating here is the physiological mechanism driving this. Susan actually touches on it when she discusses how her body adapted. It's the development of tolerance.
Okay, so building a tolerance.
Right. Your central nervous system is essentially a highly sophisticated balancing machine. It constantly seeks equilibrium, or what we call homeostasis.
It's homeostasis, right.
So when you regularly introduce a depressant like alcohol, the nervous system adapts to counter it.
Okay, so the body is actively fighting the effect of the substance just to keep you functioning.
Precisely. It turns up the dial on your stimulating neurotransmitters to keep you awake and upright while the alcohol is trying to sedate you.
Wow.
As a result, the buzz or that feeling of relaxation that you're actually looking for becomes much harder to achieve with the original amount. So to get the feeling that 2 drinks used to give you, your body now requires 3.
And then 4.
Exactly. Then 4.
It makes me think about being nose blind.
Oh, like with scents?
Yeah, exactly. Like when you buy a new cologne or a new perfume, the first few days you wear it, just one spray seems completely overpowering.
Right, it fills the whole room.
But after 6 months of wearing it every single day, your olfactory receptors just sort of tune it out. Like you can't smell it at all.
So true.
So you start using 3 or 4 sprays just to notice it yourself, while everyone around you is choking on the scent.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right. Your baseline has completely shifted, but to you, it feels like nothing changed at all. Like, growing out a haircut too.
Oh, growing out a haircut.
Yeah. You don't notice the change in the mirror day to day. It's too gradual. But if you look at a photo from 5 years ago, the difference is absolutely shocking.
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. Your sensory baseline adapts to constant stimuli. And because this adaptation in Susan's case happened over years, not just weeks, there was no dramatic crisis to force a reevaluation.
No alarms.
No alarms. You don't wake up one morning and decide to double your intake. You just have one more drink tonight because you don't feel the effect yet. The brain just normalizes the new baseline.
But as the volume of the habit increases, the physical footprint of that habit increases too, right? Like more drinks mean more physical bottles taking up space in the real world.
Exactly.
And this brings us to the actual mechanics of hiding. Because to protect that new normal, her external behavior had to shift dramatically.
Yes. This is the critical transition from merely consuming a substance to actively managing a secret. And the emotional driver for that transition is almost always shame.
Shame. And Susan actually pinpoints the exact origin of this. In her mid-20s, she was living with a roommate, and she uses the word mortified.
Mortified.
Yeah, she was absolutely mortified at the thought of her roommate knowing exactly how much she managed to consume on any given night.
See, that word mortified is a massive indicator of deep identity-level shame. Well, guilt says, I did a bad thing. But shame says, I am a bad person. And shame requires absolute secrecy to survive.
Oh, wow. I am a bad person. That is heavy. So she starts developing this tactical avoidance. And this scales up in a huge way when she eventually moves out to the countryside to be closer to her parents.
Right, the family compound.
Yes. They lived on what her dad called a compound. Her parents had 5 acres. Her brother and his family had an adjacent 5 acres. And Susan lived on almost 3 acres right in the middle of them.
So physically, she's completely surrounded by her family. The proximity is incredibly tight.
Meaning a family member could literally drop by unannounced at any moment.
Right.
And that constant proximity birthed what she describes as a highly cunning morning routine.
Cunning is the right word for it.
It's wild. She would buy the alcohol, leave the full bottles in the brown paper or plastic bags they came in, and shove them all the way to the very back of the fridge.
Just hiding in plain sight.
Sort of, yeah. And as for the empties, she'd put those back into bags too, so the glass couldn't be seen. And she would rush them down to the dumpster first thing in the morning. Every single day. She made sure her house was spick and span. Her motto was literally out of sight, out of mind.
Just think about the phenomenal amount of cognitive and physical labor that requires.
Exhausting.
She is essentially running a covert military operation in her own kitchen every morning before she even starts her day.
Right. But I have to push back on this, though.
Okay.
Because this is where the logic kind of breaks down for me. As I was reading Susan's account, she explicitly notes that her family wasn't doing anything to prompt this level of paranoia.
They weren't snooping.
No. She writes that nobody was inspecting her fridge. Nobody was counting her empty bottles in the recycling. Nobody had even accused her of drinking too much. So, if there is no investigator, why are you building this elaborate, stressful morning routine?
That's a great point.
Why stage the house if you know for a fact no buyers are coming?
It's the essential question. And answering it requires us to dive into a concept called cognitive dissonance.
Okay, cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance is the extreme mental discomfort. Think of it like a blaring fire alarm in your brain that happens when your beliefs or your self-image directly contradict your actions.
Oh, so like holding 2 conflicting truths at the exact same time.
Yes. For example, if you believe you are a highly honest person, but you realize a cashier gave you a $20 bill in extra change and you decide to keep it, your brain experiences dissonance.
You feel that friction.
Exactly. And the brain will immediately try to resolve that uncomfortable friction by inventing a justification like, well, this corporation overcharges for groceries anyway, so it's a victimless crime.
Right. Doing mental gymnastics.
The brain does whatever mental gymnastics it needs to put out the fire.
Okay, so applying that to Susan. Her self-image is, I am a functioning, normal member of this family.
Yeah. The hiding wasn't a reaction to her family's actions. It was a preemptive strike against her own internal fire alarm.
Wow.
Susan writes that she didn't want comments or questions from her family, sure, but what she was really terrified of was having to formulate an answer to those questions.
Because giving an answer would force her to hear herself say it out loud.
Yes. By throwing the evidence in the dumpster before the sun is even fully up, she is physically removing the evidence of her own reality before she has to emotionally process it.
That is so intense.
The elaborate morning routine was just a defense mechanism to protect her own ego from the reality of her evening routine.
The idea that we will do actual physical manual labor, hauling trash, scrubbing counters, running covert ops, just to avoid having a difficult conversation with ourselves is mind-blowing.
It really is.
Which leads perfectly into what is arguably the most fascinating part of Susan's story. Because if you are working that hard to manage a secret, you eventually have to ask, who is the secret really for?
And this is where the narrative takes a turn into a level of self-deception that is truly profound.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Susan first started paying meticulous attention to how much she was drinking, but not because she was worried about the alcohol itself.
Right.
She was worried about calories.
Yeah.
She had gained some weight and put herself on this super strict 1,200 calorie a day limit.
And 1,200 calories is quite restrictive. It requires you to document practically everything that passes your lips.
Exactly. And because alcohol is highly caloric, it was ruining her diet. She had to start tracking her drinks to stay under her limit. She even switched to drinking whiskey mixed with diet soda just to save the calories for actual food.
That specific detail, switching to diet soda to accommodate the whiskey, is a classic psychological misdirection.
And direction.
Yeah. She is focusing intensely on a secondary problem to completely ignore the primary one.
So she starts keeping a daily diary. And in this diary, at the top of the pages, she would write down these numbers, 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7 or 8, just the raw number of drinks she had that day.
Every single day.
Yeah. And she was writing this down purely to track the calorie cost because the alcohol was eating up her entire allowance for nutritious food.
She is quantifying her habit with incredible accuracy, but she has assigned a completely safe, alternate meaning to the data.
Right. You know, it feels like she created a financial ledger for a shell company.
Oh, that's good.
Like she thought she was doing a rigorous audit on her daily calories, but she accidentally created an exact, undeniable paper trail of her own addiction.
A ledger for a shell company is the perfect analogy. She built this perfectly logical, socially acceptable framework calorie counting to house a truth she couldn't look at directly.
Because dieting is normal.
Exactly. The brain will tolerate the narrative of, I am struggling with my weight and need to diet. Society encourages dieting. It is emotionally safe. But the brain will completely shatter at the narrative of, I have a severe substance dependency.
But she was the one physically writing the numbers down. I struggle with how you hide something from yourself when you are the one holding the pen.
By controlling the context, as long as those numbers meant calories, they didn't mean addiction. The hiding, the diaries, the diet soda, it was all a massive flashing warning signal that she was organizing her entire existence around alcohol.
But she couldn't see it.
She used the calorie narrative as a blindfold so she could look right at the problem without actually seeing it.
And years later, the blindfold finally comes off.
The turning point.
Yeah. She and her husband were moving to a new house, and he found these old diaries packed away. He flips through them, sees these numbers at the top of every page, and asks her, Susan, what do those numbers mean?
And her reaction is so telling.
Yeah, her reaction in the text is just 2 words, cringe city.
Because in that single moment, the shell company collapses.
The gig is up.
The true ledger is exposed, and she can't use the calorie context to protect herself anymore. What this illustrates so powerfully is that Susan believed, for years, that she was protecting her family from the truth. When really, the harder, much more painful reality was that she was protecting herself from the truth.
Seeing all those 4s, 5s, and 6s sitting there in her own handwriting, it must have hit her like a ton of bricks.
Acknowledging that you are the primary target of your own deception is incredibly painful. It requires a complete dismantling of the ego.
Yeah.
But it is also the only way to actually dismantle the architecture of the habit. You can't fix a problem while you're still pretending it's a different problem.
Which brings us to the pivotal transition in her life. Facing that ledger is what allowed her to finally break the cycle. Her turning point, the day she took her last drink, was January 17th, 1998.
Wow.
which means in January of 2028, she will be celebrating an astonishing 30 years alcohol-free.
It is a monumental achievement, especially considering the depth of the neurological and psychological habit loops she had to untangle.
It really is. And she didn't just walk away. She used the blueprint of her own self-deception to build tools for other people.
Yes, through her platform.
Right. Today, through her platform Live Better Sober, she offers practical, shame-free approaches to breaking the nightly habit.
And that emphasis on shame-free is vital. As we discussed earlier, shame is the engine that drives secrecy. By removing the shame, she removes the need for the elaborate morning routines and the cognitive dissonance.
But what really caught my eye in the source material was a free workbook she offers on her site called My Somatic Marker Moments, which is designed to help people interrupt that nightly habit loop before it starts. But I have to admit, I'm a little confused by the terminology here. What exactly is a somatic marker?
It is a great question. Soma is the Greek word for body.
Okay, body.
So a somatic marker is essentially a physiological sensation that your body associates with a specific emotion or memory.
Like a gut feeling.
Exactly. Think about the physical knot you get in your stomach when you realize you made a huge mistake at work, or the way your chest tightens when you hear a certain tone of voice.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Right. Your body remembers the emotional state and creates a physical reaction to warn you or guide your decisions.
So how did that apply to a nightly habit loop?
Well, for someone with a nightly habit, the somatic markers often drive the autopilot behavior. As 5 p.m. approaches, the body might start to feel a subtle physical tension or a change in heart rate, anticipating the relief of the substance.
Oh, wow.
Or conversely, the physical act of walking into the kitchen and seeing the fridge triggers a somatic marker of craving. The body is essentially making the decision to drink before the conscious mind has even weighed in.
So Susan's workbook is about identifying those physical bodily cues, those somatic markers, and catching them in the act.
Precisely. If you can recognize the physical sensation of the habit loop kicking off, you can insert a pause. You bring the unconscious physical drive into your conscious awareness.
But once you're aware of it.
Once you are consciously aware of it, you regain the power to make a different choice. You stop the autopilot before your hand reaches for the bottle.
So what does this all mean? Like, how does a listener take this deeply personal story about hiding alcohol, somatic markers, and cognitive dissonance, and actually apply it to their own life?
I think the most profound takeaway is understanding that hiding the evidence, whatever that evidence might be for you, is just a symptom.
Just a symptom.
It is a symptom of a reality we are not ready to face. Meaningful change doesn't start with just altering the external behavior. You can't just change your morning routine or throw away the diary and expect the problem to vanish.
Right.
Meaningful change only begins when we become rigorously, uncomfortably honest with ourselves about why we are hiding.
It all comes back to that one ultimate question Susan poses in her writing. What am I really trying to hide?
Exactly that. The family, the roommates, the coworkers, they're usually just the audience we use to justify the performance.
Yeah.
But the real deception, the real shell company, is completely internal.
This has been such a fascinating journey. We started by looking at the slow, almost invisible creep of a habit. How 2 drinks quietly become 6 over 20 years because our bodies constantly shift the baseline.
Yes, that homeostasis.
Right. And then we explored the incredibly elaborate, cunning lengths we will go to in order to quiet our own cognitive dissonance.
And we uncovered the psychological shell game we play, tracking calories to avoid tracking reality. Ultimately, realizing that the person we're most terrified of exposing the truth to is the one staring back at us in the mirror.
It is a really powerful reminder that our habits leave a trail, even when we think we are covering our tracks perfectly. So I want to leave you with a thought to mull over today. Take a real, honest look at your own daily routines. Are there any metaphorical empty bottles in your life?
Because the mechanics of hiding apply to almost every facet of human behavior, not just alcohol.
Right. Think about your own habits. Maybe your empty bottles are your daily screen time, and you quickly swipe away from an app when someone walks in the room.
We've all done that.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's impulse spending, and you find yourself rushing to break down and hide the shipping boxes before your partner gets home.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's chronic procrastination, and you are constantly inventing elaborate external stories about why you missed a deadline, when the truth is you just didn't start until the night before.
Whatever it is that you are rushing to the metaphorical dumpster every day.
Yeah. If you are constantly staging your own life to look absolutely perfect to an empty room, what truth are you trying to keep yourself from seeing?
That is the question that has the power to change everything.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time.